let's get started, everyone. So, welcome to Community Connect by Agentcis. This is a monthly webinar hosted by Agentcis to support the international education community. My name is Emma, a marketing manager at Agentcis, and I will be hosting this webinar today. At Agentcis, we have set our mission to empower international education professionals through various initiatives. This is our first webinar, so please support us and follow Agentcis on LinkedIn and Facebook. We would like to thank EPAC Australia for collaborating with us for our first Community Connect webinar. Today, we are going to explore the changes happening in the international education sector. Before we begin, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. We will answer these at the end of the webinar. If you would like to be involved in the Community Connect webinar, please email us at community@agentcis.com. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speakers for today, who have years of combined experience specialising in international education. Mayak, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Emma. Hi guys, my name is Mayank Kansal. I work with one of the reputed universities in Australia and been in the higher education sector for last more than a decade now. Yes, and I love this industry. It's really sad to see what's happening, but yeah, we'll speak more about it. And I would pass on it to Emma again to get.
Thank you, Mayak. Now, Henny, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Emma. My name is Henny. I work for one of the government institutions in Queensland. We provided a FED program and also for higher education. My experience is I work in all sectors, including as also working with the immigration and also with the provider and with CRICOS. So I have a bit of experience in this industry.
Thank you, Henny. Meg, please introduce yourself. Meg?
Meg, it's your turn.
Meg Shetty, can you hear us?
Hello, Meg.
Hello.
Yeah, it's your turn to introduce, please.
Sorry?
It's your turn to introduce yourself, sir.
Sorry. So my name is Meg, and I work with a private vocational provider here in Melbourne. I've been in the international education sector for now over 20 years.
Thank you, Meg.
Pleasure.
So today's topic will be divided into three main discussion points. First, we'll be exploring the current landscape of the international education industry in 2021. Then we will be discussing the changes from the impact of COVID on key stakeholders. Following this will be a discussion of the future of the international education in Australia. Lastly, we will have a Q&A session. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on Agentcis' social media. Now, let's begin the discussion. So, reflecting on the changes within the last year, what is one major change that you have personally experienced within the international education sector? Henny, would you like to start us, please?
I think the changes of how we deliver the program, method, how we engaging and communicating with our agent and also our clients, and also to help the students succeed in the study they choose to study. I think it's the most important is flexibility and also patience, how we're dealing with our client, including our agent. I think that's what's the most important. I think it is affecting everybody, and it's required a lot of patience, and it's a lot of I think it's communicating back and forth. It's different when you're doing face-to-face rather than doing it online. So I mean, it's always a glitch of technology, and this is what I find it quite challenging. especially to our industry, because we require to see our client basically.
And then Meg, how have you experienced this as well?
It's been quite interesting how this industry has evolved, and there are a lot of changes which are happening currently, and there's constant turmoil in the industry. It's become even worse with the coronavirus, and now there is the coronavirus and also the economic impact of the economy, and which results in border restrictions and a lot of politics which comes into being.
Yes.
So there are multiple variables which come into effect at this point of time, which is rather disturbing. And what it forecasts is that things are not going to normalize for some period of time.
No worries. And then Mayak, how have you experienced this as well?
I think we have positive and negatives here. So one positive is that obviously pandemic is bad. So, it's affected the education industry as a whole. The positive, what I was talking about is the online gamut, as in people, logging in from Zooms and Skypes and, whatever mediums they have. That is one area wherein I think people have effectively used this medium now, and they have realized that, online is also effective within the international education sector. But saying that, I say that international education sector is all about face-to-face. So I might be contradicting myself, but being in this COVID situation for last more than 1 year now, what I believe, this sector is all about face-to-face.
Yeah.
We have to meet agents. We have to see students, personally. Without whom we are no one actually. Without students, without agencies, we have to have that personal relationships, which we cannot develop over the internet. So that's one thing which came in really good during the start of pandemic. But I think slowly, we are realizing that this industry is all about personal relationships and more about face-to-face.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So moving on, what do you believe are the major challenges that international students are facing both onshore and offshore during this pandemic? Mayak, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, see, again, I'll go back to the point number one, which I was speaking about. International education, students come to Australia, especially to experience Australia's beauty, right? And the challenges what the offshore students are facing right now is they could be told previously that you can study onshore one term and then you can come to Australia, but now the borders being indefinitely, we do not know when it's going to open up. Offshore students really want to come down to Australia, want to experience the beauty of this country, study here, do their jobs here, and then pay for their fees and their studying and their living expenses. So that's one challenge. What I think is with the offshore students. With the onshore, I believe it's more about coming to the campus and studying. Especially with universities having say wherein students are actually they have a capacity of 20-25 students in a classroom. They want to come down to the classroom and kind of do face-to-face training. As in online was good for a period of time, but again onshore as well as offshore, I think they have to get back to the classrooms.
And Henny, did you have anything to add on that?
Yes, I mean, I think for example, I break it down into, so onshore student, I find it what is challenge for them is financial, because a lot of times students do need a part-time job for especially from certain regions. But it's also, I think some of the students require that, I think it's work experience or vocational placement. It's not just required for their education part of it, but it's also that experience, how to engaging with the other student, how to involve in a community, how it's the adapt with the workplace, and to get the job they desire in the future. For offshore student, it's basically they miss that human touch. You know, it's like communicating directly with their agent, with the university, with I guess it's also with the presenter like us itself. And a lot of times students think from offshore it's not a good return of investment, because they think, well, why should I study online? What do I get out of it? You know, having this qualification probably from certain university or certain educational provider, but they miss out that experience at all, which is, it's, you know, they don't have that practical, they don't understand what is the real world is. So for the student, they find it difficult, even onshore, they find it difficult, because study online, it's not that easy, especially for a student like English as their second language. They need that, their lecturer to be there. So it's not, I mean, it's okay if they study virtually because their teacher is obviously, except in a different room, they are in a different room and they can ask that question. But if it's online, it is okay, but it's quite challenging for many students, especially English as their second language.
Yeah, those are all great points. So moving on to the next question that we have here. So the decline in international students is affecting all key stakeholders in international education. How are stakeholders responding to these changes? So Meg, did you have anything to add on to this?
Absolutely. This is one of the most interesting questions for me because I would really relate to this one, because, you know, a lot of a decline in the sector has affected the universities and the private providers, and because of which the stakeholders and the decision makers are going all out to give scholarships which we have not seen before. Which we have not seen before. Yeah, we started with some 20-25% scholarships from different universities, and now you're going up to 30% scholarships.
Yeah,
it's all there to help the international students and the agencies to recruit the international students into those universities and private providers. So I think I didn't see this before. You know, if given a chance for me to study back, to come back to doing some to university, this is a great opportunity right now.
And then Henny, did you have anything to add on to this?
For me, it's I think it's as a provider, what we needed to do is providing additional service to our student. For example, the less deposit structure. So the student who actually stuck in Australia, they can continue study with less amount upfront. And also we are adding additional study hub where the student can go to the campus and feel a bit normal. And also for I think we needed effective communication among the stakeholder, like agent, especially, and also university. So students who are changing a provider, they're not having those hurdle, like a difficulty to changing, but also at the same time, the most important is educating agent, stop poaching other agent students, or even going to other provider and changing the student from one provider to another provider. Regardless what the changes is, I believe we needed to act ethically and with integrity, because after all, we are in education industry. We are not selling stuff where we can get rid of it. Education is for somebody's future, and we do help in creating a future generation. So we need all to keep this in mind. with integrity. I think that's what I believe anyway.
Meg, are you still here as well?
Yes, yes, I am.
Your video is just off, but did you have anything to add on to this?
Sure. See, the decline in international students is affecting the key stakeholders in many different ways. I'm seeing increased closures of businesses. There are many, what do you say, below the line practices which are happening where
Yeah.
agents are moving students from one institution to the other, collecting commissions and bonuses.
Yeah.
The schools and colleges too are suffering a lot. And many schools and colleges which have both multiple domestic and international students have slowly moved into domestic space, and they have they are beginning to disengage with the international student segment. So that is one of the bigger impacts which I'm seeing. What especially the agents and others must realize that, you know, at this point of time, the continuous practice of moving students and withdrawing students and shifting them is being noticed, which would not just impact their reputation with the college, but also the college's reputation with the immigration.
Yeah.
And those are the foreseeable risks which are emerging into the future. And that is one risk which no college will be willing to accept with such a kind of activity.
Yeah, so those are some great points. So now, do you think the international education sector will be back to normal with the rollout of that vaccine? So Henny, did you want to start us off here?
Yes, I believe probably no. The reason is it's all about, I think it's for the international students come to Australia, it's a lot of Australian people perception. So it doesn't matter Australian vaccine is rolled out is successfully and all done, but not all country will be able to do the same as we are. So perhaps maybe, for example, maybe country like Taiwan, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, where is all very low risk and very less COVID.
Yeah.
So this it's going to be slowly coming to Australia first. It's not going to be all the same time. So I don't believe it will be straight away. It will be slowly.
Did anyone have any other opinions on this as well?
Sure. If I can just add in. See, one must understand that vaccine rollout has just begun. We have a population of 25 million. The current rollout is the first dose, which has been undertaken on about 600,000 people. So there are millions of people to go about. Point number one. The point number two is the client countries. And when I say client countries, what I mean is countries like India, Nepal, Vietnam, Indonesia. What is the status of vaccination in those countries before Australia allows them in? There are a variety of issues connected with that. So it is not just what happens in Australia, it is also dependent on what happens abroad. In the host countries, and how safe is those countries. For example, South America is already in a very bad situation. Brazil, which is considered to be a level 1 country, is in a massive decline with corona, and so is Ecuador and Colombia and other countries, just as India is seeing a resurgence of corona. So I don't think vaccine is going to be the answer. Increasingly, the governments would not just look at vaccination, because let's not forget, the first dose is being given. There is still the second dose which has to come, which will be after 28 days.
Yeah.
So please remember that it's not going to happen, all will happen within next 3 months.
Yeah.
It's going to get cascaded over the next 12 months or next 15 or 18
Yeah.
months. It's not going to happen overnight. So anyone thinking that vaccination is going to solve all our problems, no, it is
Yeah.
not going to solve all our
Yeah.
problems.
True. If I can add into it, I don't think Australia at the moment having the quarantine premises is adequate to safety and COVID-19 requirement. So among government, I think federal government and the state government needed to talk to each other and come up with a plan and including safety and also costs. We needed to know who actually bear the cost. Is it the client? Is it the institution? Is it the university? Or is it a government?
Yes. Yes.
Just to add on to that, I think I agree with Hani and Meg. Is the things are really unclear right now. You know, sometimes we hear from, say, Darwin that from Darwin that they're opening up right to they're doing some kind of test runs and kind of stuff, but they also did it successfully, I think. But there are other states, speaking about it, like Victoria and like NSW. But as rightly said by Henny, that we have to look at the overall picture, and
Exactly.
and also it's said by Meg, we have just started the vaccination rollouts, and it's just the first phase, and even then we have 25 million people to go. It's a big task, as in we still have a long way to go.
Yes,
Definitely.
So moving on, more about the future of international education in Australia. It is reported Canada and Europe are being favoured more than Australia by international students. When the borders open, do you believe Australia will regain its popularity? Did anyone have any thoughts on this?
I'll start in this one because this is another question which I want to answer, and because a lot of agencies keep on asking me about this thing. Canada and Europe, obviously, people, especially from say Subcon region, they want to move out of say, I'm from India, so they want to move out of India and they want to go to abroad, right, to study. Now, Canada, Europe, US, they do not have any restrictions. I think the students can come into the country and study, right?
Yeah.
Australia still, is considering, and it will take a long time for them to open up the borders. And you never know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I think we were first saying that there's going to be a tsunami that's going to come to Australia when it opens up the border. But I do not agree to it. I really do not agree to it, because students who have already opted for Canada, Europe, US, and also looking at the the permanent residency, that is what every other student coming to Australia would look into. It's tough. You cannot get a very easy PR in Australia. So all things have to be considered before coming to Australia. So Australia will regain its popularity as a safe and a good place to study, but the tsunami is going to come. It's a question mark.
Yes, definitely.
Henny, did you have anything to add on to that?
Yes, I think for what we needed to gain the popularity again is that we required provided a better service to our potential student and also the agent, because I think it's also a job outcome for our student, for a regional and metropolitan. After all, that Mayank said, a lot of students come to Australia for permanent residency, and which is they make it difficult. Even they get it, there is no job. I think it's also for an agent to have a better knowledge of this industry, not just to do with the cash flow only. And I think it's also another important thing. I believe the government needed to review probably the GTE of the country and assessment level of the country, because it's like at the moment, I look at it myself from educational point of view, but it's also from, I have a lot of friends in South Asia, and they find it a little bit, I guess, this decision is a bit biased.
Mm.
For example, we have a certain region, it's their assessment level 1. When they come to Australia, all they wanted is work without study. Is it that fair? Which is some student I know, which is like from certain region, like India, Nepal. I mean, they do want to work, but they also want to study because of the family pressure. I guess it's a community point of view, how they see it, you know. So I think this is very important, and I think we do need to have a strategic plan and also provider to have the accountability. It is not just taking student without meeting any entry requirement whatsoever. We set up a student to fail. I think that's what I believe. It is a lot of changes need to be taking place before we can regain our popularity. But I believe Australia is one of the best destination for safety, and it's also the relaxed lifestyle Australia got to offer to people. So I think it's yeah, we will, but it is going to be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for the discussion there. So moving
Can I just add to it?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Meg, yeah, go ahead if you like.
See, Canada and Europe were historically preferred destinations for international students. Australia was relatively further away. There are many reasons. One is Canada has very close proximity to the US. Students generally who go to Canada very quickly migrate to the US or Canada. So there's that. Anyone in Europe has more flexibility to move around the European Union, and the Schengen visa grants them that permission and things like that, the student visa. Australia, on the other hand, is a relatively more isolated country. New Zealand is the neighbor. It's the Australian economy which could be an attracting factor. Now, what happened at the beginning of Corona can have an impact on what happens into the future. Because there were many political opinions that international students are welcome to leave the country. They are supposed to be self-paid students. Australia is not responsible for them. Locals first, Australians first. All that will come to be accounted for at one point of time, because many students who were in distress here are obviously talking about it, that Australia did not stand by them. That is point number one. Point number two is regain the popularity is again a question. How popular was Australia, and for what, and for what reason? Australia was always an attractive destination for one simple reason, and that was the permanent residency which comes out of the qualification. If that single element of permanent residency is taken out, that's when it measures the real popularity of the destination. Now, that becomes a question how quickly the immigration rules will change into the future. And the likelihood of immigration rules changing is very high, as there is increased push towards regional locations.
Yep.
Now, the question which would arise for international students is how easy it is for them to get jobs in regional locations. It is not easy. We all know that.
Absolutely.
So the question of popularity of Australia would arise from multiple variables. Employability, the prospect of employment, location of study destination, ease of visa, and things like that. So that's my 2 cents.
I think we'll leave this question here for now, and then we can always come back to it for the Q&A session that we have planned later.
Sure.
So moving on from this question, in your opinion, do you believe the Chinese government advice to avoid studying in Australia will affect international education enrolments? And subsequently, How will this impact the Australian relationship with South Asian countries in terms of international education? So Mayank, did you want to start us off here?
I think, see, it's a very important and it's a good question, actually. Now, this would definitely affect the Australian relationships with the, with South Asian countries. And I think we will see it in future, because the effect of Chinese students not coming to Australia to study will be a big impact, and it's affecting, and you can see the impact. And the G8s obviously are suffering. The second tier universities are suffering. The private providers are suffering. So we will see the impact of Chinese students not coming to Australia because they were number one when it's considered to be, they're coming to Australia and studying, and then used to come the subcon region. But the Australia relationship would change, and I think I'm seeing that in near future with the South Asian countries, especially India and Nepal, and Bangladesh, to be specific. But we have to see it as an but I'll pass it on to, I think, Meg. I think he had better reply on this one.
Thanks, Mayank. The way I would look at it is, yes, definitely the Chinese students would impact. Chinese government advice is impacting. Big universities are already suffering as a result of it. And the way the Australian system is designed, that if the universities are suffering, then the food chain down the line, like the RTOs, etc., also suffer, because then there are no students changing courses and things like that. Now, Chinese students, one must understand, are a very long in the pipeline, in the value chain. So they come for foundation courses, then they do LA course, then they do wet course, and then they do the bachelor. So they are in that pipeline for about 7 to 10 years. Each year they are spending about $10,000 to $15,000. So imagine over a period of 7 to 10 years, they're spending close to around $100,000, $130,000 just on the education. While an Indian student comes on a higher ed visa, pays $30,000, within 6 months, changes the college and starts paying $5,000. His or her entire cost is no more than $30,000 or $35,000 for the entire 3 years. And then they will apply for the PR, and then all the. So what has happened is, and let me put it very candidly, is the value of an Indian, Nepalese, Bangladeshi student has declined considerably. And what I mean to say is there is very little respect for Indians and Nepalese students. And you would still see that in the visa grant situation, because even if the Chinese numbers are declining, the numbers of visa grants for Indian students need not necessarily rise, or for Nepalese student. And the reason is that the value which the Indian or the Nepalese student bring into the system is very negligible, or it doesn't make a big difference. I am increasingly reading that Australian government is focusing on South America and African countries, especially the rich African countries, and also European nations, to get more students. To believe that the status of India, Nepal, and Bangladesh will change because the Chinese advisory has come is, I think, less likely even to occur. It may not happen that way. Indians, Nepalese, Bangladeshis, the market equity is not very high, the value which they add to the economy and the value they add to the system, because they're still exiting out of after 6 months. So
did you have anything else to add on to this conversation?
Sorry, it's me.
Yeah,
Hi. I think definitely yes. And for some other country, for example, like I said, India and Nepal, example, Mayank and Mag already said, it's for those regions, especially from South Asia, they're looking at quantity, not quality. And for example, Chinese students, Southeast Asia, a lot of them like Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, they're looking of their study to complete their study and to get out of something. And also if they want to study vet, they are going to study vet. They're not going to university and change to vet because of the visa. It's also helping because there are majority of them assessment level 1 or 2, which is if they study in assessment level 1 institution, they become assessment level 1. And this is the most important I see. It's that we as a provider needed to educate and push more for agents in that region to understand the rules and regulation and advising a student accordingly with integrity, because it's not just promising something, it's not there. I mean, we dealing daily with a student who actually want to change educational provider, and because they just don't understand. And it's a lot of time. It's partly not just agents' fault, but it's also, I think, parents and society, but it's also, I guess, the rules in Australia, if I can put it. A lot of times students from subcontinent, because they are in a high assessment level, they applied for high university just to get a visa. And soon they come here, they just can't afford it. They don't have the academic ability or financial ability, and that is the huge problem.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up for the discussion and let's move on to the Q&A session.
Yeah.
So thank you for the very, very insightful discussion that we just had. So we'll just pass on to the questions in the chat, which, just give me a second. Okay, so we have a question about how are you dealing with students asking about the borders and if they want to enroll for a course for 2021 or 2022?
Would you like me to answer it first?
Yeah.
Okay, for us, it's, I mean, at the moment, none of us know when the border will be open. So what we are advising the student is just be honest to say we don't know when is the definite day the borders will be open. However, they can apply it for a program and also the student visa. And my understanding with us specifically, you can have a form, you can give the student a form. So if they apply for a student visa, they get their visa. They can, if the border is not open, they can resubmit that form with their the visa, student visa, I guess, approval, and it can be changed the start date anyway, and you defer the student with that there is no cost for a deferral.
Okay, great. I might just move on to the next question because we're running a little bit behind on time. So the next question is, do you think the travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand will affect the international education sector? So anyone want to answer that?
I'm happy to do it if you like. We just discussed that before.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I think my understanding is maybe, but one, we needed to understand the Tasman Agreement is basically for citizen to citizen. So I understand it's a lot of different nationality. It's a permanent resident in New Zealand, so they can come to Australia and study in Australia as international student. So that is another market we might look into and probably try to shift it a little bit, our focus.
Anyone have anything else to add on to that?
Let me just add. See, there's as Henny said, there's a Tasman Agreement. It is to facilitate the travel of citizens or permanent residents. I don't think that travel bubble can enable international travel or quarantine requirements.
Okay. We have another question as well. Someone just commented, some of the providers do not allow deferrals as they are providing online study.
I have just asked Simrita, is she asking for onshore or offshore students?
And she just said offshore.
Okay, so if she's saying offshore, I think majority of the providers are doing it now. As per my understanding, there might be a few who have just started not deferring the students, but majority of them are doing it. So yeah, Simrita.
Okay. Okay, no worries. So I think we'll wrap it up here. So thank you guys for speaking as well, and I thank you for the attendees as well for joining us today. So we will have a copy of the webinar on Agentcis' Facebook and LinkedIn page. So please follow our socials for updates on upcoming webinars. We'll also be posting a poll on our LinkedIn event page where you can give us feedback to improve for our next webinar. This was our first webinar, so we did have some kinks, but hopefully I think it went really well, and I think this is a really great discussion. And then as well, I would also just like to take this opportunity to ask our speakers for a little bit of a photo for our first webinar to celebrate, if that's okay by you guys.
Sure.
Sounds good. Amit, would you like to be in it? No. Okay, no worries. I'll just take a photo now. Okay, great. So yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Henny. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Mayak. It was really great.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you for our attendees as well, and thank you for the questions as well. I hope everyone has a lovely week and a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.